What is up, everybody? It is Boss Driver. In the words of one of my favorite car reviewers, Doug DeMuro, this is the Vans Aircraft RV-14 by SimWorks Studios. First, let's take a look at both of the models that are available, the RV-14 and RV-14A. One is the tailwheel version and the other is the nosewheel version. I have flown the RV-4, RV-6, and RV-8, as well as the Harmon Rocket 2 in real life, so I'll be able to relate some of those experiences to this model of the airplane. Let's check out what they've got in the selection. Let's check out the paint jobs that are available. Not really much variation in the design. Weight and balance, it's showing 1,800 pounds out of 2,050. Seems about right. Let's check out the RV-14A, see if it's any different. It's got the tip-up canopy. That's pretty cool. Alright. For this review, let's select the RV-14 first. We are going to Aurora State Airport in Aurora, Oregon, because this is the home of the headquarters of Vans Aircraft. Alright, here we are at Aurora Airport, and oh my goodness, there are some other RVs on the ramp. I love it already. Let's take a look around. There's a couple RV-14As, it looks like. Oh, super cool. Exterior model, looking good. Even the slight wrinkles on the metal of the skin. You can see the ribs. Let's take a look around the interior, see how the interior design is. Oh, looks like I got a co-pilot there. Hello, co-pilot. Wow, the leather, the detail looks really nice. The reflections, I'm liking it. Very cool. Flight controls, nice sound effects with the flight controls. Let's run through the checklist and see what it does. Before starting engines checklist.
Throttle. Closed. Mixture. Lead.
Okay. Completed the before starting engines checklist. Looks like it's loading up the avionics. The avionics that they have for this model look pretty cool. A touch screen, really good. I like the interior quality so far. Let's go ahead and get the engine started.
Magnetos.
Okay, engine is started up. Nice startup. Adjusting throttle to 1200. Let's look at the exterior. Good sounds. That sounds about right. I've heard that noise for thousands of hours. Engine gauges, let's auto complete that item. Force finish.
Mixture.
Okay, after starting engines checklist.
Flaps.
Let's turn on strobe and nav lights. Let's turn on all the lights and take a look. Reset the parking brake. Okay. It's got a setting of flaps -3 for Probably increased efficiency in high-speed cruise. Let's put it at 0. Alright. Man, everything looks great. Let's get going. To my right. Check the control feel on the ground, the taxiing. Check how it looks during taxi. No, we're not going to need the whole runway, so let's slow down here. Take a look. Everything's looking good. In real life we would do a run-up. We're going to skip that here. Although, if we want to listen to the engine sound, let's take a listen. Ooh, yeah. Yep, sounding good. Let's play with this for a second. Turn on the map. Zoom out. It's funny because the map on here doesn't show us as an airplane. You'll see that after we take off. It's actually blank on this side, but that's okay. It shows it on our main MFD, the representation of our aircraft. So that's cool. Here we go. Flaps are set. Flight controls are checked. Make sure our transponder's on. Taxi onto the runway for departure. Lifted off. Let's check the climb rate. Turn that down just a little. Let's check the climb rate at a couple different speeds with full power, full manifold pressure, and full prop. Let's check at 100 knots and see how we're doing. As you can see, at 100 knots and full power, 2827, we were getting about 2,400 feet per minute on the climb rate. Alright, let's take our altitude back down and try the climb rate at a different airspeed. Let's try 80 knots. The specs for the RV-14 and 200 horsepower IO360 are that solo weight, it will climb at about 1,800 feet per minute per the van's website, and at gross weight it will climb about 1,500 feet per minute. So we'll see if this comes close to that. Let's bleed off a little bit of speed, and then we'll try to climb at 80 knots. So at 100 knots, we're showing about 2,400, 2,500 feet per minute at full power. Here we are slowing down. Imagine it's going to be pretty nose high. There's 80 knots. We got full power. We are climbing at, let me stabilize, about 80 knots. We're still climbing at about 2,400 feet per minute. We lower the nose and let's climb at 120 knots. See how that does. There's 120 knots. And our climb rate, let's stabilize for a second, is 2,700 feet per minute. 2,600 feet per minute. Wow. Well, that's quite a bit more than the specs from vans. tell you what, let's do. Let's change our weight and balance for a minute. And let's give it, let's bring it to about gross weight. A little more gas. And let's add a little bit for the pilot. Add a little bit for the co-pilot. Alright, now we are at gross weight. Let's see what the climb rate is now. Lead off some speed, get back down to altitude. Let's do a hard turn. Here we go. Pull the G's. Oh yeah. There's 2.5. There's 3 G's. Alright. Leading off some speed. Alright, now let's try 100 knots climb rate. Pull it up. Stabilize at 100 knots. There is about 100 knots. And our climb rate has dropped to 1,900, maybe 2,000 feet per minute. Let's try it at 120. Accelerate just a little bit. It seemed that we had a higher climb rate when we were closer to 120. So there's 120. Stabilize there. Climb rate is 2,300. Down to 2,000. 2,100, somewhere between 2,100 and 2,300. So the climb rate is a little bit high for this aircraft. That's all right. Now let's get a measure of full power top speed, which Vans says for the RV-14 is 207 miles per hour. Be about 180 knots. 181, 182 knots. We are looking at 191, 192 knots top speed at low level. So that's well over the 207 miles per hour that the specs show. Let's real quick climb up to cruising altitude, about 8,000 feet. And it says that 75% power at 8,000 feet, which should be maximum manifold pressure, we should see a cruise speed of 197 miles per hour. Alright guys, I have climbed up to 8,000 feet MSL. It's standard pressure and standard temperature day. Alright, I've got 22 inches of manifold pressure. I'm going to pull the prop back to, let's try 2,400 RPM. 2,400 RPM is pretty normal for cruise. So we got 22 inches, 2,400 RPM. I've got auto mixture on, and that's giving us a fuel burn of 11 gallons per hour. That's about right. Let's see how it looks for our cruise speed. We are showing a true airspeed of 174 knots. Knots, 173. That's right about the 197 mile per hour cruise true airspeed per the specs from Vans. so that's a good number. And 11 gallons per hour is pretty accurate for the 200 horse IO360. Okay, let's do a stall. Let's see how the stall numbers are. The gross weight stall, since we have the plane at gross weight right now, the van specs show 59 miles per hour. Although it doesn't look like they're listing it on this front page right here with or without flaps. So it's probably with flaps. It's okay, let's try a power off stall. Looks like it's decelerating normally. We're maintaining 8,000 feet. That might be a little bit slow of a deceleration. Sometimes the idle thrust characteristics in Microsoft Flight Simulator aren't quite correct. Sometimes the idle thrust is a little bit too high for a lot of these planes, so they have a tendency to be carried forward. There's the stall brake, and that was about 64 knots. Alright, now let's try it with flaps. Go flaps full. And see where it breaks at gross weight. Ooh. Alright, well, it was a little bit mushier for that stall, but I'd say that the brake didn't really happen until the published numbers by Vans, probably around 51 knots or so, which equates to about 58, 59 miles per hour. Let's try one more time. Full flaps, stall. Here we go, 51. Yep, so the brake was about 50, 51. So that's alright. Let's bring the flaps back up and let's see if we can spin it. There's stall brake, holding left rudder and full aft stick. We're just sort of slowly rotating around. What if I add some aileron in that direction? Let's see what that does. How about the opposite direction? Kind of has an odd effect. Okay, so it has just some gentle spin characteristics in this model. In the real airplane, you can get it to spin without too much effort. Alright, let's try a little bit of other handling characteristics. Let's try some aerobatics. Here we go. Let's go full power, gain some airspeed, and we'll try a loop. .160 knots is plenty for a loop. Let's try to pull 3 to 4 Gs. Here we go. Pull. Keep pulling until about halfway through the top, then a slight forward push, but not to negative, just to about 0. And then, as is typical for the RVs, you have to bring power out on the backside, otherwise like that you reach top speed pretty quickly. B&E, you don't want to exceed B&E. I'd say that was pretty realistic as far as the feel of a real RV. Alright, let's try a roll. There's full left stick. That is just about right. That is good roll characteristics. Try roll to the right, slightly slower. Yeah, I'd say that's real good. Okay, I think the characteristics of this plane are really good, modeled well. They did a great job with it. The climb rate is a little high. It might be a little bit of a tweak for the propeller or power constants. Or maybe a tweak to the power in general for the plane, but the cruise speed was pretty accurate. It just climbs a little bit fast. Let's bring it in for a landing. Looks like we're on a nice long straight in. The real RVs are a little bit slippery. They're more difficult to slow down in the pattern, especially if they have a fixed pitch prop, and especially if they have a cruise fixed pitch prop, then they are a bit harder to slow down in the pattern, so you gotta slow down early and often. With a controllable pitch prop, you can use the thrust characteristics at idle to slow you down a little bit better. Use that air brake that you have up front. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start dropping some flaps here. Down to 100 knots, we'll go full flaps. Let's see if we can do a 3-point landing. Evaluate that characteristic. Ooh, nice sound effects. It's got appropriate, they have added some instability that I don't feel with other tailwheel airplanes in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The real RVs are very stable on the ground, easy to control, easy to land. I felt a little bit of instability in the yaw motion on the ground there. Let's try one more landing. Bring the flaps to 0. And this time let's try a wheel landing. Microsoft has a instability characteristic built in to its aircraft, like the pits and the extra 300, to make it so that you feel the dance on the ground with the rudder pedals. And in my experience, in some ways they've made it a little too dramatic. The rudder movements on the ground, in most cases, real world that I've experienced, aren't quite as dramatic as what Microsoft has built into the program here. Sometimes you can get some pretty dramatic rudder dancing on the ground. But we'll try a wheel landing to a full stop, and then we'll just do a quick review of the RV-14A. Alright, let's try a wheel landing to a full stop. Alright, there we stuck the wheels, dance the rudders, you feel that instability, a little bit less control authority, keep the stick back. Woo. Yep. They definitely have pronounced that instability on the ground pretty well. I'd say that is not accurate to real life. The real RVs are very docile on the ground. So the instability that they've put into Microsoft Flight Simulator is a little bit unrealistic. That's alright. The 3-point landing was a little bit more stable. That's probably what I would recommend for that. Okay, let's bring the flaps up. And let's shut down here. Yeah, take that, edge light. There we go. Next, I will review the RV-14A and see if it's much different, but it's just going to be a quick review because the characteristics are probably very similar.
17 departing straight out.
Boss driver 1 altimeter, 29er decimal minor, 2 wind, 255 at 7.
Here is the RV-14A. Let's do that quick evaluation and see if it's much different than the RV-14. It really should only be a knot or two difference here and there and similar climb rate. Alright, everything's looking good. Let's release the parking brake. And first we're going to do a climb test. Let's do 100 knots again. I set the aircraft at gross weight a little over 2,000 pounds. So per the specs, the gross weight climb rate should be around 1,600 feet per minute. Alright, good characteristics coming off the ground. Let's climb at 100 knots in full power. Let's see what our climb rate is. Stabilize at about 100, just slightly fast. Alright, there's about right. Showing 2,400 feet per minute. It's a little bit much. Let's nose over and see what we get for top speed. While we do that, let's take a look at the exterior. It sounds perfect. The throatiness of that big 4-cylinder. The RV-14 can take up to the 215 horsepower engine, and that will really make it go, I think. We're passing through 170 knots, still accelerating. Top speed should only be about 180, maybe 181 knots. Alright, so it looks like our top speed is a little bit fast, 190. Yep, that's a little bit fast to the top speed. Alright, let's pull it through a loop. Let's get about 4 Gs. Check the left wing. So that confirms that this model is slightly overpowered compared to the real thing. We have a little bit high of a top speed. Cruise speed seemed about right in the RV-14. I'm not going to climb up to cruise altitude in this one. I'm just going to assume that it's pretty close, just like the other characteristics. And the climb rate was a little bit high. That's alright. The other handling, as far as the control authority, the control feel, it feels perfect. This feels like flying an RV. I'm very impressed with the control feel. Let's do a roll. Here we go. Roll it over. Woohoo! Let's see that from the outside. How about a 4-point roll? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And roll it on over. Nice. Alright, let's bring it in for a full stop. And that'll be it for this review. Well, this is a cool little airport for vans to be based out of. Touchdown, about 57 knots. A little wheelie. Man, perfect. This plane is great. That is it for the review. Let's shut it down here. That is it. Just remember, look good, sound good, fly good, in that order. See ya!